This is the harsh truth about Paradox's new grand strategy game, Europa Universalis 5. That's a name that makes players tremble. For some, just the thought of its overwhelming complexity sends shivers down their spines, while others can hardly sit still with excitement. When you play Europa Universalis 5, it feels you are at the beginning due to this insane scope of this game. Unfortunately, Europa Universalis 5 is also pretty broken. That's just the truth. Bugs and crashes can repeatedly ruin your plans, and several large patches can even destroy your save files, and it's obviously impossible to cover every aspect of a game like this in one video. It's simply too big. But with this video, you should get the key elements. At the center is clearly the much more comprehensive simulation of the game world, compared to its more board game-like predecessor, now spanning the years 1377 to 1837. That step has succeeded surprisingly well. For a long time, I feared this new entry might just turn into a fancy map editor, but I was pleasantly surprised by how much fun the political and economic development of a nation has become. At its core, the game mirrors history. Medieval feudal states gradually concentrate more power in the hands of a central authority. You achieve this by stripping privileges from the estates, the nobility, clergy, burghers, and commoners, and enacting laws to curb their influence. Of course, it's not that simple. Push reforms too fast, and the estates can rise up in revolt. Progress, both social and political, involves a long back and forth, tied into the familiar social values from Europa Universalis 3, as well as taxation and the structure of your population. Because Europa Universalis 5 actually simulates the entire world population of the time, and uses that as the foundation of its simulation. Culture, religion, social class, and access to goods, all of these affect the happiness of population groups, which the game calls pops. If their happiness drops too low, they become restless and revolt. The makeup of your society depends largely on your economic choices. For instance, if you promote urbanization through laws, parliament, and advisors, and then build many trade structures in your cities, you create a strong bourgeois class. That in turn affects your trade income, but also the political landscape, because a wealthier middle class demands more influence. These systems feed into each other beautifully, making managing a nation both challenging and engaging, something the earlier games never quite achieved. For that reason, the fifth installment feels radically different, fresh, more realistic, and much more alive. And there's always something to do. Time passes more slowly. A century takes much longer than in previous entries because of the depth of systems. You can also directly engage in trade, ensuring that scarce resources make their way to your homeland. In fact, Europa Universalis 5 is partly an economic simulation, with supply chains and fluctuating prices for food, consumer goods, weapons, and building materials based on supply and demand. There are also detailed systems for colonization, culture, art, religion, and extending state control over remote parts of your realm. Through laws, infrastructure, and research, you centralize power to increase taxation. For large empires like Castile, that's no small task, because distance from the capital weakens control. And of course, there's the constant military expansion. The warfare system now resembles Crusader Kings 3. In early centuries, armies are mostly levies from the populace, not professional soldiers. Food logistics, battle formations, and unit composition add nuance. But we're not entirely convinced. War has become more cumbersome. Gathering troops is tedious, and moving them across a map divided into thousands of small provinces quickly becomes chaotic. Fort zones often cause armies to get stuck for no reason, even when they could easily march through enemy territory elsewhere. Ultimately, quantity tends to win. Big armies matter more than tactical details. Most of this, though, is balancing. What's harder to deal with are systems that deviate from standard gameplay, like the Holy Roman Empire or the Catholic Church, and special historical situations like the Hundred Years' War or the Western Schism. These combine many unique rules, creating room for countless bugs and inconsistencies. Conceptually and structurally, Europa Universalis 5 is far from a failure. It has enormous potential. Paradox clearly didn't try to broaden its appeal or make it more casual. On the contrary, they made it even more complex, and that solid foundation could make this game a strategy masterpiece in a few years if the publisher gives the developers enough time. The amount of historical detail is also mind-blowing. Beyond geographical accuracy, the game provides tooltips and events featuring poets, reformers, and explorers. It recounts real uprisings, marriages, and landmark laws. Europa Universalis 5 is practically an encyclopedia of human history, but never overwhelming, since all the info is optional. We strongly recommend engaging with it. It massively boosts immersion. Each country has unique content, helping you learn about its state, society, and culture as you play. You'll also find unique research trees per era like the Renaissance or printing press, which define your nation's direction. Focus early on exploration, and you might fall behind militarily if others develop gunpowder first. These tech trees also include unique cultural bonuses, a partial replacement for the national ideas from Europa Universalis 4. Gone, however, are mission trees, popular in Europa Universalis 4 and Hearts of Iron 4. The lead developer argues they don't fit the sandbox philosophy of Europa Universalis 5 and won't return. If you rely on that structure for motivation, this might not be for you. One genuinely great new feature is the automation system. It sounds scary but works wonderfully, letting you hand off aspects you find tedious or don't yet understand. It's especially useful for beginners and for trade since market prices change constantly. You can fine-tune how much control to give the AI down to specific trade routes. Another huge improvement is the stackable tooltips from recent Paradox titles. Hover over any number or highlighted word to see detailed info. It still takes time to learn, but it's far less frustrating. In fact, exploring these interlocking systems is part of the fun, discovering how things work, improving with each run. But that's not everyone's thing. Not every player has the patience or mindset for it. That's why, even aside from its bugs, Europa Universalis 5 is not a game for everyone. Another issue is the passive AI. The world rarely evolves realistically. Russia and Ming often never form. The world feels stuck in the 14th century. Maybe future patches supposedly address this. And here comes the truth about Europa Universalis 5. It is a twofold experience, simultaneously brilliant and broken. It feels like it's still in early access. Paradox probably just decided after 5 years of development to release it already. But it would have been more honest to launch it as an early access title. Either way, Paradox has created a fascinating game. One I personally can sink my teeth into. For hardcore Paradox fans, I can recommend it. But for everyone else, consider this a clear, don't buy it release warning. If you can wait, then wait. This game might have a bright future, but time will tell.